My name is Aleksandra, and I am one of the tutors at Athena, and I'm back to you guys with a second knowledge clip over your writing assignment, and this is one going to be specifically about your introduction. So in my first knowledge clip, which I'll link down below, I basically show you guys how to approach the overall essay, but in this one I'm going to go a little bit more into your introduction specifically. So one of the 4 parts of your writing assignment that you need to include. So let's just get started. First thing about your introduction is that I would recommend it to be about a page or 600 to 800 words, depending on which, estimation or guideline you prefer to go by. So this is what I would recommend for your introduction, not too many words so you can save the most of your word count for your theoretical framework and especially your analysis section. And before I get into why we use the introduction and what we use it for, I'm just going to remind you guys of your assignment. And again, in your assignment, you're supposed to reflect on the Economist article that you had to read and also address the question, to what extent is having EU passports as a commodity morally legitimate? And again, you should explain why your research is relevant, address the recent policy, deliberate whether this policy should be adopted by the government, and then also answer your research question or your central question, basically, and formulate a new one. So this is just basically the main guidelines of your entire assignment, but from here, you can basically make a more specific central question if you would like. So firstly, the introduction, what we use it for. The main uses for the introduction is, like it says in the name, introducing your topic or your goal of the essay. And again, your central question is the most essential element of the introduction. This is basically the thing that's going to introduce or segue the rest of your entire writing assignment. Because obviously, in your theoretical framework and analysis, you're trying to answer or provide evidence for your central question. So in this case, again, to what extent is the EU passport commodity morally legitimate, and more specific, what type of sub-questions will you need to answer in order to answer this bigger question? And again, make your reader understand why you're focusing on what you're focusing on in your essay. So why is this important? Why are you trying to answer this question about EU passports, etc.? So this is basically what we use the introduction for. It is just basically introducing your issue and introducing the rest of your essay as well. So one way that helped me a lot whenever I was writing my own introduction was I split it into basically 5 main parts. So you have the background, the problem identification, central question, research method, and the structure of the paper. So I'm going to go through these one by one. First thing that I'm going to say is the background. So this is essentially where you're introducing the situation or introducing your issue. So in this case, they want you guys to include a current event, and I would recommend it to be recent, within 5 years. So for example, a way that you could find a current event is just that what is something new that has happened regarding EU passports, their demand, maybe like a new discussion about the EU passport market, etc. So what is something recent and relevant to your paper that has been happening? So that's basically your background. You're supposed to hook the reader basically into reading more of your essay. Then we go into problem identification. So you elaborate basically on the moral or legal issues of the EU passports and them as a commodity or having a market for them. So you basically elaborate on this issue that you just introduced in your background, and you need to basically address why it's important. Is this a new issue that's been happening with these EU passport markets? How big of an issue is it for the EU, and who and what is affected? So by the market for EU passports, obviously some of the EU countries could be affected with the lack of tax payments, or the people could be affected because they don't have an EU passport, things like that. Who and what is affected? And that's basically where you're going more into depth about this problem that you're going to address for the rest of your essay. Then, once you have problem identification, you can segue right into your central question. So you can basically link your part 2, which is problem identification, and part 3, they go basically hand in hand. So from the issues that you just mentioned in part 2, you can introduce your proposals, and they say 2 max. So I would recommend, if you have 2 really good ones, then go for it. But if you want to make sure that just one of them is very high quality, then I would just go with 1 proposal. But yeah, from the issues that you just identified in part 2, you can go ahead and introduce your proposal that could solve this problem about the moral legitimacy of EU passports as a commodity, excuse me. And again, your central question should be neutral, have a defined scope, and not too broad. So it should be neutral in the sense that you do not sound biased when you're asking, when you're trying to address your issue, and it should be specific enough to be able to answer in 3,000 words. And so again, the terms that you use in your question, they should be clear and well defined. So if there's any terms that you use in your research question that you think the reader would not understand or are more complicated concepts, I would recommend that you guys take a sentence to explain what it is either before or after your central question, just to make sure that everything is concise and very understandable for the reader. So the reader should be able to understand exactly what your research question is asking. And again, you need to have an open question for your central question. So it cannot be answered by yes or no. It needs to basically be able to have some exploration. So a good way to easily make a question into an open question is just to say, to what extent? So to what extent are EU passports as a commodity morally legitimate in the European Union? You can even go a little bit more specific with your research question, like only make it specific to some countries or make it specific to a certain scenario, like you can go more specific than the initial question that they put in your assignment outline. So again, that's basically what your central question is going to be consisting of. Then you have the research method that you're going to talk about. And for this one, I would not spend a lot of time writing about this in your introduction. It should probably just take about 1 sentence, honestly, because in this one, you know how you're going to plan on addressing and justifying your research question. So in your paper, obviously you're going to be doing a review of past literature, so you are not conducting an experiment or study to justify your criteria or arguments. There are other research methods, just like you guys learned in BRM, but in this case, you're not doing any experiments. You're just taking all of the literature from past studies or past articles, anything like that, and you're basically using those as evidence for your arguments in your paper. So again, this should be pretty brief, and you can even combine this in a sentence with part 5, which is about the structure of the paper. So what is the sequence that your paper will follow? So you need to make sure that you state your section names with Roman numerals and describe basically each section in about 1 to 2 sentences, what that section will contain and what it's going to actually add to your paper. Like, how is it going to further enhance the reasoning or further answer your central question. Again, your sections are given to you. So they told you you need to have an intro, theoretical framework, analysis, and conclusion. So you have 4 main sections. And again, I just put it here in Roman numerals so you know how you're supposed to describe it in your writing assignment. And an important note also for your introduction is that you need to mention how you will come to an answer for your central question. So how are you going to basically approach answering your central question that you already mentioned, and also mention why this paper that you're writing is relevant. Why are you answering this question specifically? What is it going to add to the conversation? Things like that. So that's also important thing that you should mention briefly in your introduction. And before I wrap this video up, I'm going to show you guys, an example of my essay that I wrote last year. And just be aware that this essay was for taxation, so it's not about the same concepts, but the structure that I followed is very similar to what I just introduced to you guys. So basically, in this entire first paragraph, I'm giving background. So at first, I'm talking about the increase of, digitalization in the economy in the past decades. I gave some statistics, some evidence to back that up. And then I went into a more recent idea. So in this case, I kind of took I went a little bit farther back and then took a more recent approach in the second half of the paragraph. So I said in 2018, this happened. In 2014, this happened. And it's basically all talking about the issue that I'm going to address. And then in the second paragraph is where I'm basically identifying my problem. So basically, I'm just saying that the European Union, it doesn't account for the technological developments. There's aggressive tax avoidance happening. And there's significant undertaxation, decreasing government revenue. So basically, this is where I'm identifying the issue that I'm going to address in my paper. So this basically entire paragraph I used for my problem identification. And then in response to this issue, basically, that I just introduced, I show that my paper is going to address to what extent blah, blah, blah. Basically, to what extent my central question. So again, it should be an open question, just like I have here. To what extent is blah. So that's basically how I introduce my central question, which is part 3 of the structure that I just showed you guys. Then lastly, I have the basically research method and the structure, like I said, in combination together in this last paragraph. So basically I say that various literature will be analyzed. So that's already, answering your research method. And then I introduced section will do this. And then section 3 analysis will do this. Section 4 conclusion will do this. And overall, it will address potential future studies and discussions to develop. So what is my paper going to add to the conversation? And in total, you just could have a final conclusion sentence, what this paper is going to do and how it's going to answer your central question. So this is an example of my essay that I did last year. I followed a really similar structure to what I just showed you guys, but it does not have to be exactly like mine. Like, feel free to combine some things in different paragraphs. You don't have to follow my structure to a T. It's just what I recommend based off of past experience to make sure that you address everything that they want you to in your introduction, whilst, keeping it short, sweet, concise. So that's basically going to finish up this video. Thank you guys again for watching. I really hope you found it helpful for your writing assignment. And again, I would really appreciate any requests for future videos you have. So please comment below. I'm going to also link in the description the BRM literature review video. So basically this literature review video, I know it's about BRM, but it's still applicable to what you guys are doing right now because it's going over how to search for literature in Google Scholar and things like that, and also how to keep track of your literature. So I would recommend that you guys take a look at that one if you're still confused about how to search for articles and studies. And on either Saturday or Sunday, I will be uploading another video about your theoretical framework. So really similar style to this one that I just this video basically, but it's going to be talking more in depth about your theoretical framework. But that's going to finish up this video. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Have a great day. I will see you guys next time.